guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, a little bit of a Christmas ornament for Alternative Tuesdays. Well, I'm still playing around with these ABS plastics that I got from Omicron Plastics, and I had this idea in my head for a Christmas ornament, and I wondered if it would work. And now it is a lathe project, and what I'm going to start off with today's program is the template for the project. Well, the ornament that I have in mind to make will be an old-fashioned styled Christmas light, Christmas tree light bulb. And I'm just drawing out on some scrap MDF what I think would be the proper shape of one half of one of these old style lamps. And once I'm happy with this half of a shape, then I'm going to take this over to the scroll saw and we're going to cut this out. So now we have our template, and what this is half of a profile of our turning. Now I'm going to trim this down to make it a little smaller in order to be easier to use on the lathe. You don't want this big blocky thing over there at the lathe. But this is just a guideline for me. These are not going to be exact. They're not going to be identical. I am not that good of a turner to get these identical. But as long as they're close, that's all I care, because of course they'll be on different parts of the tree. So you'll never actually have one right beside the other one to show that it's a little off. So don't be concerned about whether or not you can do exact turnings. This template is only a guide. So now that we have that done, we want to head over to the lathe. What we want to do is, normally for a project like this, what I would tell you is that you want to cut your blank and chuck it up and turn it to round. But I'm kind of cheating a little bit, and I'm using sections of this ABS dowel that I've got. And I do have to turn it round a little bit because there may be some inconsistencies with the way that I have it mounted. I may not have the same center, that sort of thing. But it's no problem here. I'm just using a 4-jaw vise chuck at the headstock, and I've mounted up this piece of, in this case, it's 2-inch diameter ABS plastic dowel. And I'll put the links down below of where you can get some of this if you want it. If you don't have the ABS dowel, you just have the blocks, by all means, cut off a piece and turn it to round. Once we get this in place and it's chucked up like this, I am just going to true this up to make sure that it is turning properly and that it's turning true to the center. Well, now that the project is all trued up and it is turning round and true to the center here, we want to turn this whole thing down to a diameter of about 1.5 inches. Now this measurement is not imperative. It will, change, but it's a good starting point. So let's go with 1.5 inches diameter. Well, now that we've got it roughly turned down to our dimension, what we want to do is get our template and hold it up in place here. And you want to see roughly where the widest section of your body of your light bulb is going to be. This will be the base, and it looks like the widest section is right about here. So we're just going to mark it. And what we're going to do now is taper this from this mark all the way down to our point. Just a gradual taper, and check it every once in a while by holding your template up over your blank. You won't be able to fit it down over at this point because, well, basically there's too much material over here by the headstock. So we're going to hold this in place every once in a while, just checking as we taper down from this line to the end of our blank. Now, once you get that taper, the next thing that you want to do is you want to round off this end here to give it that light bulb look. We're kind of getting a little too tapered here according to the template. This should be a bit of a rounder taper than what this is, but that's okay. Like I said, these aren't exact turnings. Don't worry yourself about it. Just get that end rounded off, and that should pretty much finish off this end. We now want to mark the top of our light bulb, and for that all we're going to do is line up our template so that the end of the light bulb is lined up with the end of our light bulb here, and we're just going to roughly mark the top of our light bulb. And we will transfer that mark all the way around, just like that. And all we're going to do at this point in time is from our center mark, which we've lost here, so I will remark that as well, roughly there. So from our center mark, we will now taper it the other way to get that round edge of our bulb, knowing that we're going to end it at this line here. So see how these fibers here are spinning around on our piece? Don't try to pull those off with the machine running. If you want to do it with the machine running, you can get your chisel in there, and without actually contacting the plastic, you can manipulate those spirals to go off of the end of your piece, just like that. You don't want to get your fingers in there and then have it so that one of these pieces grabs a hold of you and pulls you into this spinning mechanism. Also, a good point that you may want to do is if you're finding that you're getting too close to this jaw chuck, put some colored electrical tape around there so that it makes it more visible for you, so that you know where your fingers are and where your chisel is. So we have this tapered in now. I kind of like the way that's tapering, and all we're going to do is round this off to kind of finish off the shape and try to clean it up just a little bit. If you're not comfortable with the chisel method, of course, you can just reach in once you shut the machine off and it has stopped spinning. You can just reach in with your hands and clear the fragments out of there, the little plastic ribbons, if you will. So once you're happy with the shape of your bulb, we're going to check it against our template just to see how close we're actually getting to our shape. And you know what? It's quite a bit different than our shape. I'm just going to trim off my template so I can actually get it in there and see where I'm at with the size and the shape of this light bulb. So just give me 1 second here. Well, I can see by the shape that we're just a little bit off, little too much of a taper, not as bulbous around here as I would like. So I'm going to play with this shape until I get it the way that I like according to my template. And then once you get that done, then it's time to trim the stem area down in this section here that's closer to the chuck. Now for this, I'm actually going to be using my skew chisel, which is a little unorthodox, but you know, as long as it's safe, then you're okay. What I will caution you about, if you are going to use your skew chisel as a scraper essentially, is that you watch that you don't catch your heel or your toe, because that will tear into the piece and it will make one heck of a mess. Not to mention that it can get a little risky at that point in time. So you don't want to be catching that heel or the toe of the chisel. Well, now that I've got the shape roughly where I want it, and again, I'm going to reiterate, you can probably see here, this is not perfect, but I think that it's going to be just fine on the tree. So the next step that I want to do is we need to take down this section right here, and we need to take that down to a 1/4 inch diameter. And I will use a parting tool for that, and I'll show you what we're going to do once we get that down to its final dimension. Well, I've parted off the one, and as you can see, it is not perfect to my template at all. And I've turned another one, a little blue one here, and although this one is a little closer to my template, that too is not exact, and I don't really care. It's just a guideline, this little template, so don't beat yourself up over it if you're not getting exactly the same shape. I mean, these are not the same, but they both look great and they'll both look fantastic on the tree. Well, we're not done. We're actually going to get into a little bit of an experiment here at this point in time. And for that, you're going to need a container of some kind. Well, here's where our experiment comes in. And I have a container here that was actually a peanut butter jar at one point in time. And you want a container that is not going to be affected by or melted by acetone. And that is what we're going to be using for this little experiment, is some acetone. So what we need is some paper towel, and we're going to line the inside of our container, the walls of it, with paper towel. And you want to have it so that it creates a chamber or a cavity inside. Now you could figure out all kinds of ways to mount this and hold it in place against the walls. The easiest, I would say, would be magnets, where you put one on the inside, one on the outside, if it's a plastic container like this. Or if you're able to get one that is a metal container, you could just place them along the inside and hold them that way. Well, I'm going to finish securing this, and then I'm going to show you the next step in our little experiment. So I'm just using some rare earth magnets, and I'm just taking one, holding it on the inside where I want it to be, and then flipping it over to one on the bench. And there you go, click, just clicks right in there, and that'll hold that in place for you so that it doesn't collapse. Now all I've done is I've taken a small scrap of 1/16 of an inch poplar, species doesn't matter, any little scrap of wood, and I've screwed it to the bottom. I've drilled a little pilot hole in our stem, and I've made it so that it'll stand up. Now this is kind of important here for our next step of the project. Our next step is to take our acetone, and you don't need a lot, just a little bit, and just basically get the paper towel slightly wet with the acetone. As I said, you don't really need a lot here. Oops, that may have been a little too much on that one spot. All right. And there we go. That there, as far as I'm concerned, is enough. So we have our paper towel inside that is now wet with the acetone, and after we get that, you can feel the cool air coming out of there from the acetone. We're just going to place our decoration or our light bulb in the lid of this peanut butter jar, and I'm going to screw it on. Just like that. We just want to look down inside. We're going to make sure that that light bulb is not touching any of the sides of our paper towel. You don't want the paper towel or the light bulb coming in contact with the paper towel. Well, so what is the point of this? Well, the point of this whole experiment is to basically shine up our light bulb. Acetone dissolves ABS, and it kind of makes it a sticky gooey mess sometimes, so you want to be careful here. And what we're doing is we're using the fumes of the acetone soaked paper towels to basically surround our light bulb and melt that top layer of ABS and give it a nice shine, a nice sheen. So we're going to give this 45 minutes in our acetone chamber, and I'm going to go for lunch or something, and then we're going to come back and see how it looks. Well, 45 minutes is up, and we'll just remove the top of this and see how it turned out. And there we have it. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's very smooth. It's very shiny all the way around. The acetone has done its job and really given it a nice sheen, and it has really polished it up for us. At this point in time, though, this is sticky. So we're not going to be touching this and fooling around with it. In fact, we are going to leave this alone at this point and let it sit to dry. Well, once your ornament is dry, probably takes about 15 minutes. I would give it at least 15 before you touch it. I mean, we're not in a rush here, are we? So we're going to take the base off of this Christmas light bulb, and this is what we're left with. Remember, we have our little stem there, and I really like the sheen of this thing now. It's nice and smooth. It has a great shine, which means it will reflect well on the tree. But it doesn't look right with this little nub here. So what I've got is, this is a shelf pin support sleeve. And you can buy these anywhere where you get your shelf pin supports. And all we're going to do is glue this using some CA glue onto the top of our ornament, and that will serve as our threads that would normally screw it into our light socket. Well, our very last step is to take an eye bolt and screw it into that same hole that we used to mount our plate to keep it from falling over. And we'll just get the smallest little eye hook that we can find, and we'll just screw it in here. Now this will also help to keep the insert in place, and because it sinks into the insert just a little bit, it kind of looks like those old-fashioned rings that used to to be on the ornaments, but it's not. We all know it's an eye bolt instead of that piece of wire, so this won't come out. And there you go, there's a little light bulb Christmas ornament. And there you have it. An ABS plastic Christmas light bulb ornament for your tree. Guys, there's plenty of different colors of ABS out there to choose from, and because of that, you get a really wide variety here of how you can make these ornaments. And that acetone treatment or fumigation or whatever you want to call it, it works really, really well to get that shine or that sheen on the ABS. It was actually one of my viewers, Raymond Bradford, that pointed me in that direction and sort of gave me the idea to experiment. So Raymond, thanks a lot for dropping your comments in the kazoo build to help out with this particular finishing process. I appreciate that. Guys, I hope you're going to try this project for yourself. It's an awful lot of fun. And I mean, even if you don't want to use the plastic, this can be done from various species of wood. And I've done so, and they look great as well. But they don't have the vibrant colors that these ABS ones do. I really like these ABS ones. I think they're going to be a great addition to my tree this year. And I hope that they're going to be a great addition to your tree. And as well, I hope you're going to join me again for another edition of Alternative Tuesdays.